Welcome to The Interchange. I'm Latife Hayson. For the past 25 years, I was living in Napa Valley, California, consulting and representing buyers and sellers of wineries, vineyards, and luxury estates. My clients were the founders of publicly listed companies, tech giants, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists, all living their best lives and many changing up the world before our eyes. On The Interchange, I take a deep dive into their personal stories and many other fascinating people I have met from around the world.
If we all suddenly are in driverless electric networked cars, maybe it can all be coordinated such that we don't have as much traffic.
We talk cutting-edge technology, financial intelligence, leadership, climate change, the power of philanthropy, passion, and much more. But that's not all. As a patron of the world-renowned festival Napa Valley, I chat with internationally renowned artists and emerging talent who grace the festival stage during the 10 best days of summer each year. It's like being in Europe and going out to a performance every day and every night in the most beautiful settings and incredible food and wine. You really do feel like you're in Europe. So tune in for each episode because The Interchange is where inspiration meets innovation. Hello everybody, today we are thrilled to have with us Grammy Award nominated vocalist and concert performer Monica Mancini. Monica has collaborated and worked with icons like Placido Domingo, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones. And this year she and her family are celebrating what would have been their father Henry Mancini's 100th birthday. So we are honored to have her here with us today. Hello Monica.
Hello, what a lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hello from Sydney, and you're in LA, and we finally pulled this together. So I'm really honored that you would be here to share your musical journey with us and all the celebrations and tributes that you've had to your father, who would have turned 100 on April 16th this year.
Yes.
So I wanted to start out talking about your mum, the beautiful Ginny Mancini, who passed away just 3 years ago at the age of 97. You were very lucky to have her here for that long.
Oh, I think about it every day.
Oh, well, she sounds like a remarkable woman. And she inspired you to take up singing. So what would you like to tell us about your mum and how she inspired you and all about her life?
Well, gosh, she met my dad back in the 40s. She was a band singer with the Tex Beneke Band who took over for Glenn Miller. And my dad was a piano player, and they used to go on the road together, and she was the only female, and they ended up sort of sitting together on the bus, and they just, the rest is history with them. But my mom was, as they call a studio singer here in LA, and she was a very small group of singers who did every television show. Back then, back in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, there were all of these TV variety shows. And she was from a small stable of singers that used to hop from studio to studio and sing on all of these variety television shows. And oftentimes after school, I have a twin sister, Felice. And when my mom would be working when we were off school, we would go meet her at the studio, and I would see her, getting made up in the chair and wearing all these fancy clothes that they put you in. And I thought, boy, this looks like fun. So, her inspiration, neither of my parents ever said, oh, you're going into music, or you're going here, or you're going there. It just sort of, my singing career evolved just because I did follow her path. And I started out as a studio singer. And it really wasn't until my dad passed away that I was given an opportunity to go out and perform his music as a solo artist. So anyway, she definitely inspired me in that regard. She was someone to look up to. And then, after a while, she just said, she wanted to hand it over to, she kind of retired. She just wanted other younger singers to come in and sort of replace her doing, and the days of variety shows were waning. And then it became more radio and record recordings. But she decided to step back and kind of just be our mom. which she did really well. And so that's kind of that's our story.
Now, she was a dancer too, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, she got us into tap dancing as a kid, and her mother gave her dancing lessons as a child. And I think her mother wanted her to become a dancer. So let's just say she could dance, but she was a singer. So if they had you move, and sing, then she could do it really well. But I wouldn't have called her a dancer per se.
It's funny you mentioned about your twin sister. I'll tell you a funny story. I had no idea you had a twin sister. And it was only yesterday I was watching Greg, your husband, Greg Field, and the great Shelley Berg, and who I thought was you, sitting on a panel. And
yeah.
So we'll get to it. It's about at the Library of Congress. And I'm sitting there watching it, and Monica, Greg, and somebody asks her a question, and she answers, and this name comes up, Felice. Well, I knew that's your sister, and I was like, oh my gosh, they made a mistake. And so she's talking away, and then she mentioned, she was talking away, and so I rewound. I thought, no, that can't be, this can't be right. And then I looked again, and I thought, wow, she looks just like Monica. Long legs, beautiful, and the hands, and all the mannerisms. And I thought, I have to ask Monica, but I certainly won't ask who's the eldest, because I have three sisters, and one of my sisters, for decades, whenever we were out together, I'm the youngest. And everybody says, who's the oldest? I'm like, is it not obvious? But for decades, right?
Right.
So I thought, I'm not going to ask her. But I thought, you know what? I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm going to look it up on Google, and up comes, yes, they're twins. I'm like, oh, who knew? Who knew?
Well, I am 5 minutes older, so
Well, you are identical twins, and your mannerisms, I could not believe it. I'm sure you have so many amazing stories.
Well, we were very good Catholic girls in Catholic girls' schools with nuns, and so we didn't pull any stuff much. So
but double takes, lots of double takes.
Yeah, for sure.
So you started your musical career at the age of 14 in the Henry Mancini chorus. So what would you like to share with us about your journey to this point and some of the most memorable moments of your career from 14?
Well, at that age, my brother sang at the time, and my sister sang. And so my dad thought he would give us an opportunity to go on the road with him. School was out. It was during the summer, and he was doing a 3-week engagement at a place in Lake Tahoe, the Sahara Tahoe. And he invited us to come and sing with him for this show. And Johnny Mathis opened the show, and Dad was the headliner. And so we got our feet wet there. And I knew that my dad wouldn't have hired any of us had we not been prepared or able to do the job. He didn't, nepotism only goes so far, and he didn't want to look like an idiot, having untalented children, on stage. So he had a lot of faith in us, and that's where it got started. He had his Henry Mancini chorus on the road a couple of times over the years, but then he didn't do that anymore. He was more into film composing and conducting pops concerts all over the world. So I just, as we mentioned before, I just kind of went to an open audition, and I was in my early 20s, and I saw an ad in the Daily Variety. It's a trade magazine, and it said, speaking of dancing, the ad said, singers who move well. And it gave an audition place, and it was a cattle call. It was like hundreds of people show up for this thing. And I had never done anything like that before, but I showed up at the audition, and I got it. That started my road career. The first gig was with a guy named Peter Marshall and the Chapter 5. He is a big celebrity here in the States. He had a very famous Hollywood Squares, a television show. And anyway, he was also a really good singer. So that got me on my path, on my career. He gave me my first job. And then I kept auditioning for other gigs on the road. And I had a blast. I mean, that was like a really fun time for me. And then, as I mentioned, I, was given the opportunity to go out on the road with Bill Conti, who wrote Rocky and several other themes. And he was taking over for my dad in symphony concerts that my dad couldn't fulfill because he was ill. And so Bill asked me to go on the road with him and sing my dad's music. And that's kind of what got me started as a solo artist. But I was this road kid, I just loved traveling and being with our little group of singers. And it was fun. I mean, spending, 3 weeks time in Las Vegas, back when Las Vegas was Las Vegas, like the Rat Pack kind of Las Vegas. Anyway, that's my story.
Well, tell us about your albums. I play your music all the time on Spotify through my Sonos system, so it blares throughout the house. And your music is so romantic and soulful. I can see how your father, who was beloved everywhere, and especially in Hollywood, how your father and your parents' relationship rubbed off on you, it really affected your music, I think, because it is so soulful. So tell us about your albums, and then I'd love to ask you about the album that you collaborated with some other artists with.
Sure. Well, the very first album I recorded was a tribute to my dad, so it was all of his music. And you're right, their relationship was really inspirational in how I interpreted things and how I saw the world. My dad was a very romantic, soulful guy, and unlike a lot of jazz singers, and this is just a fact, I don't do a lot of riffing and scatting and all that kind of stuff, because I like to be very true to a lyric and a melody that people write, because they wrote it to be performed that way. And so I stayed really true to those guidelines and singing the music that was given to me as it should be sung, I thought. Anyway, but yeah, the first album was a tribute album to my dad, all of his music. And then I had to, come up with other ideas about music I liked. And the next one was, a Cinema Paradiso, which was a CD of all movie film music. And my dad's favorite film was Cinema Paradiso. So I did that theme. And so again, it was all a lot of mostly very romantic, soulful, I think, music, and very much spoke about how I interpret a song and how what kind of things I like. I did, in my last CD, actually, I did collaborate with some pretty interesting people. And it was, I'm an old, I hate to say old hippie, but, singer-songwriters were my inspiration when I was a teenager and into my 20s. And so I had all the, Jackson Browne and Paul Simon and Stevie Wonder and all these people whose music I listened to throughout my youth. And I decided to pay tribute to them. And it so happened that Jackson Browne came on board. I didn't know him, but I, called him and I said, you want to do a duet with me with one of your songs that I happen to love? And he was so gracious about it, and he did it. And Stevie Wonder was on there, and who else did I work? Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. I mean, some pretty heavyweights just came on board because I don't know why, they love me. What can I say?
I know why. I know why. So that was I've Loved These Days, right? That was the album?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. We want our audience to know that. I wanted to run through some of the moving along to your dad. Oh, actually, before I move on to your dad, I want to talk about your siblings. So Felice, she started to sing when she was 15, but then what is she doing now?
Well, she never got the bug to really perform. She did high school plays and starring roles as a kid. But she went along the path that my mother did with music education. Both of my parents were very involved in music education and mentoring young people to have careers in music. And Felice ran an organization called the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, which was started by composer Michael Kamen, who did the music for Mr. Holland's Opus back, I think it was in the 80s or something. And then he passed away, and Felice became executive director of his foundation. And it's all about, putting musical instruments in the hands of kids that can't afford them or don't have them in music schools. And, it's just passing it along. So that's what she does. And she just recently retired. So, we have coffee a lot.
Oh, that's great. And then your brother, he's a podcaster, writer, comedian. What can you tell us about
That's
him?
news to me.
Oh, I need to check with Google again. I have to go back to Google. Well, actually, that's what they have written about him, actually, online.
But he's a comedian?
Yes, I was surprised.
Latife, we've got to straighten you out.
Oh, gosh, I better send you. I'm going to take a picture and send it to you from Google. Okay, tell us about him.
I would love that. Well, he actually is a singer-songwriter, and he has been all his life. And when he got into music publishing, so he worked for Arista Records and a couple other organizations for a while. And he just likes to, he's kind of a hippie at heart, and I don't think he'll ever lose that. And so, he plays guitar, and he, publishes music and tries to, spread the gospel of Mancini throughout the world. He does a lot of traveling to Spain and all over Europe. So anyway, but the comedian part is very interesting. I have no idea.
Okay. I have to go back because I normally don't get my research wrong. So the three of you have worked so hard this year. We're going to get into it in more detail to pay tribute to your dad, along with Greg, your husband, Greg. But that was what your mother wanted, right? So tell us about your mother's wishes.
Well, she had been saying for many years that she wanted to, she realized that the name Mancini, unless you're someone of our generation, you ask a young kid who has Mancini is and they have no idea. So her purpose was, she wanted to just make sure the legacy was solid and in place, and that his music would be played, particularly by orchestras who have children's programs. And she wanted Dad's music to be played in all kinds of orchestras all over the world. That was her focus, but she also knew that she wanted us to figure things out and how we could help promote the legacy. And, toward her, the last couple of years of her life in particular, and the very last one, although we didn't know she was going anywhere, she was healthy as a horse, so, things happen. But, she said, the legacy is in your hands. And, here, it's yours. Do with it what you will. And I think we did what we have created. It has surpassed any expectation we ever could have had. And my mom would just be so friggin' happy about everything that's transpired and that continues to. I mean, there might be some things down the line that we haven't even thought of yet. Well, the one thing that will be down the line is they're in the middle of making a documentary, which we've been trying to get off the ground for years. And it just happened that this was the time that was right. And so that will be, people will be able to see that in, the second, third quarter of next year. But yeah, we've been busy.
Yes, I was going to get to that a little bit later, but since you're talking about it, how many tributes, tell us about your year, because you launched, I think, on the 16th, on his actual birthday, the 16th of April, and we will also talk about the album. But tell us about the tributes and the celebrations and where they were, some of them, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I wouldn't mind. I never mind talking about this. The very first, we did a kickoff at the Arch Center in Miami at the University of Miami, and with the Henry Mancini Institute Orchestra, which was totally appropriate in the perfect way to kick off this whole years long series of events that we had. And then, we were in, oh my gosh, we were at Royal Albert Hall a couple of months ago with the BBC Proms Orchestra did a concert in honor of my dad. We were at, as you had kind of mentioned, the Library of Congress, again with the Henry Mancini Orchestra. We did over the summer a wonderful concert in the Napa Valley. My husband, Greg, who you will meet later, is one of the producers of the festival. And I did a Henry Mancini 100 tribute concert there at one of the wineries, and it was glorious. You know, we have a lot of movie clips and try to tell. There's a story that we tell with the music, and kind of it's not just a concert. It's got more going on. And I think probably this November 29th, the day after Thanksgiving here in the States, we have our PBS Great Performances special that will be aired throughout 2025 and beyond. And it's a very exciting concert. And we opened the Hollywood Bowl season. The 2024 Hollywood Bowl season opener was a Mancini 100th concert that was filmed by CBS. And so it is so good. You're going to love it.
Well,
I don't know. I don't think you get that in Australia. I wish you did.
Well,
but
you know, I should know, but I don't watch TV. I only watch YouTube.
Lucky you.
In fact, we were watching the election. I had an election party the other day, and
Oh,
everybody arrived.
no.
No, we're not going to go there because we don't talk any politics on this show. But I had
Okay,
to
good.
ask people how to figure out how to watch it on one of the main stations because I don't know.
Oh,
Anybody who knows me knows I don't watch TV.
well,
But I
I
can't
admire
wait.
that.
Yeah.
I really admire that. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But you know, there will be a link that we will provide for you because it's really quite a spectacular show. And, you know, with Michael Bublé and Cynthia Erivo and Jeff Goldblum, who are now, you know, promoting the heck out of Wicked, that just is opening here this week, I think. So it's quite a spectacular, beautiful production.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And, you know, while we're on this subject, congratulations on the album that you and Greg produced, Henry Mancini's 100th Sessions. Henry's Got Company. Really
Yeah.
amazing. And I was so fortunate to get the footage months ago when we were going to do this of when Michael and Greg walked into the studio in LA to record Moon River. I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. What an amazing rendition. So the album, let's talk a little bit about the album. It's only 7 tracks. Moon River has 2 renditions, one with Michael Bublé and one with Audrey Hepburn. Oh, and then she reads, I've got goosebumps, truly, it gives me good. Audrey Hepburn reading a letter to your father, which is just magnificent. So what was the thought process behind the tracks that you chose, and why did you choose to sing the track that you did, which was The Days of Wine and Roses?
Well, gosh, you know, we knew we wanted to make a record to honor Dad. We knew we had to start somewhere, so we just sort of made a short list of his biggest hits, and then, you know, the first one we decided to do was Peter Gunn because that meant the most in terms of, you know, John Williams played piano on that when he was in his 20s, and you know, Quincy Jones and my dad go back since the beginning of both of their careers, and Arturo Sandoval, who's a really good friend of ours, and Herbie Hancock, who's a really good friend of my husband's. Anyway, we just put this sort of killer A-list band together to play Peter Gunn, and it worked. And it just was that. So we took it song by song. We just said, okay, which one are we going to do next? And, you know, this whole project took about 1.5 years to put together. Was a bit of herding cats, just trying to get everybody in a studio all at the same time. You know, you ask about, you mentioned the Moon River Bublé version and Audrey Hepburn. The interesting part of that is that Dad's very favorite version of Moon River was what he wrote for Audrey. It was a very simple, beautiful arrangement that he wrote just for her. And The only other person that has ever sung that arrangement is Michael Bublé. We had it kind of just, what am I trying to say? I'm not swimming. What am I doing? We just had it made, in his key and just did a little bit of tweaking. But, the version he sings is actually the version that Dad had written originally. And no one else has sung that because Dad used to perform that version in concerts. And he would play the piano and the orchestra would do their glorious thing. And that was it. So they're two people doing the same song, and almost the identical arrangement, but the versions are so different. It's mind-blowing, really. And the one that I did, I didn't have I had no intention of singing The Days of Wine and Roses. We knew we wanted Take Six to do it a cappella because they sound like a gorgeous orchestra anyway. And we were going to give it to another singer to try to find someone else to do it. And we just couldn't find quite the right person. And then someone had said to Greg, well, this sounds really good. Why don't you I did a demo of it for these other singers that we had in mind. And this guy said, what's wrong with this version? It sounds really good. And you should be on the damn record.
Of course.
So, yeah, well, I didn't think that through.
No,
but
it was great. It was,
that's what it is.
The album is amazing. I highly recommend it to everybody. I really, really do.
Thank you.
So, Monica, for our young audience, and we do have a pretty young audience, would you like to sort of list some of the biggest movies that your father, there were so many, some of the biggest movies that your father wrote music for?
Well, we'll start with Breakfast at Tiffany's from Breakfast at Tiffany's from Moon River there. Last night, it's funny, Greg and I were watching TV, which you don't do, but we do. And there's a TCM, Turner Classics, movie classics, and they have all the old movies, and we turn it on and there's Charade with Audrey Hepburn and who's that handsome actor? Come on. Cary Grant. And so, the theme from Charade, which is very well known, The Days of Wine and Roses, I think if there's a younger audience here, they obviously will know the Pink Panther. I mean, I don't think any kid from 2 on doesn't know that melody.
Right.
They're weaned on it. So,
The Thornbirds.
Yes. See, you're asking the wrong person. I forget things. But yeah, The Thornbirds. I mean, that was, one of Dad's favorite scores he had ever written, because he hadn't written for television before in a miniseries. And he won what did he win for that? I think a Golden Globe. But the music was so lush and so evocative of everything in the Australian outback, as you know. And it was gorgeous, gorgeous score. So I sing in concert. I sing one of the songs from that, and on this PBS special, which you won't see because you don't watch television. But some other movies. There's a movie called The Great Race that he did. The score is wonderful. Victoria,
yes.
Which is, I think it's a perfect film, and I don't know whether any young people that you are speaking about have seen it, but they should, because it's movie making at its finest, and it's the perfect marriage of a musical score and a film. It should be a master class in how it's done. It's wonderful. So those are a few.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to read off nominations and awards. Not all of them, there's too many, but let's just let our audience know that Henry Mancini was nominated for 132 awards, including 72 nominations for Grammys, 20 wins, 18 nominations for an Academy Award, 4 wins, Primetime Emmy Awards, 2 nominations, 1 win, International Film Music Critics Association, 4 nominations, 1 win, 1995 Lifetime Achievement Award, 1999 inducted into the Hall of Fame for Moon River, and 2001 inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Pink Panther, Hollywood Walk of Fame, Songwriters Hall of Fame, Golden Plate Award. What an extraordinary, extraordinary, talented human being he was.
Well, you just educated me, because I haven't read a list of awards, but the one wonderful thing for me personally going through this process for the last couple of years, honoring my dad, is that I always knew he was a great musician and had genius about him, but we've taken a deep dive into his music and his life, and I have this entirely new appreciation for who he was as a human being, and his musical genius. I mean, he could write anything for any style, anything, and he's really something. So he needs to be acknowledged and honored, and so that's what's going on.
Well, you're doing a remarkable job. And speaking of a deep dive into his music, 900 boxes of the Henry Mancini papers are now archived at the Library of Congress. So what can you tell us about that? Was that just recently that you donated them to the Library of Congress? And
I think the library has had them for about 8 years or something like that. Yeah, and the wonderful thing about having given all of his archives, most of them, to the library is because it's so accessible, and any young person can go in there and access anything he's ever done, and
wow,
do a deep dive into him as it would be fun to do for a lot of people. A lot of students. Dad liked to mentor. He mentored a lot of young musicians, and he wanted to see musicians getting properly trained and in a position that they could go out in the world and work in music and earn a living. So he played a really important part in that.
So I read that the 900 boxes spreads further than a football field. 900 boxes. So were you involved in helping pull all that together before you gave it to the Library of Congress, or was your father? Did you
Hell
the
no.
people that?
Well, we decided as a family what we gave them, and they wanted everything, so we gave it to them. But I was not personally involved in sorting and all of that, what goes into donating to something like that. But we decided that would be a really good home for the Mancini archives, and so there it is.
Perfect. So you and Greg are very much involved in Festival Napa Valley.
Yes.
How long have you been involved with them, and tell us about your experiences and why you love being up there? I know you do because I see you there every year. And, and by the way, your concert this year, I mean, I was there for it. I have my own footage. I wish I had a full song, but I was just using my iPhone. It was phenomenal, especially with the clips. And I interviewed Charles Letourneau recently. We just launched his interview, actually. One of the co-founders of Festival Napa Valley. And at the end of it, I put together some highlights just for our audience for about 12 or 14 minutes. And you certainly featured in there. And the clips of the movies as you were singing the songs was just was so beautiful, so beautiful.
Well,
the footage was amazing. Yeah.
We do that in concert because it takes the audience to, you can actually see what the music was written for, and how important a music score plays in a film. It kind of would just be pictures without the music, and right. The music gives it life. And we try to do that in all of our concerts. And we also try to have people relate to my dad as being someone who, as I like to say, this music didn't write itself. There is a person that wrote this music and made this film take life. And so we want to connect Dad's name and his face with the music.
Right. So, and you had the, so you have the Henry Mancini Orchestra as part of the Frost School of Music. So tell us about the Henry Mancini Institute at the Frost School of Music.
Well, the Institute was started here. I'm in Los Angeles, and it was over at UCLA for a while. And then we just decided that it needed another home. And Shelley Berg is a dear friend, and he is the dean of the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. And he wanted to see if we wanted to have the Mancini Institute be represented by the Frost School. And it was a pretty easy decision, and he's taken great care of it. And the musicians that come out of there are phenomenal, as you heard in the concert in Napa. And so they just, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, came on board with Festival Napa to be part of the entire, I think it's 10-day festival. And, Greg got involved in it, I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago. He may correct me when you speak with him. But Charles and Rick, who head the festival, thought they could use a pops component because it was generally a classical festival over all those years. And so they wanted a pops element. And since Greg is a great producer and knows a lot of wonderful artists, they brought him on board so that he could bring in that missing element. And now it's the perfect festival. And, you mix all that music with great wine and great food, and it's a magic combination. So it's a fun, yeah.
The festival I am so passionate about the festival. I think it is, as you say, the combination of incredible music, beautiful settings, unbelievable food and wine, the hospitality. I mean, it's so special. We're so lucky to be able to go there every year and enjoy.
Oh yeah.
But speaking of Napa Valley, a lot of people go there, and I was in real estate back in the day. A lot of people go there and they leave with this dream of, having a little cottage in the vineyards and making their own wine, and then I would have coffee with them and they'd change their mind. But I hear that you and Greg are making wine.
That's our dream.
Tell us about your wine. I think you might have dipped your toe at one point thinking, maybe we want to buy, as I seem to recall a conversation with Greg. However, you now have your own label. So tell us about that.
Well, yes, we do. It's a long-winded story, but I'm going to cut right to the chase. We have a couple of rows of vines at the Napa Valley Reserve, which is a very exclusive, beautiful wine club property in the Napa Valley, and we are growing our own wine. And they let you label it. You create your own label and test make sure the wine is to your liking, and then we have beautiful cases of wine. It's called My Huckleberry Friend, and in honor another homage to my dad, because that's a famous lyric from Moon River, obviously, and we thought it would just be the perfect name for our wine.
Are there any more tributes this year to your father, or have they come to a close now? As we
No, they haven't. We are again going back to London to do. We did the BBC Proms this past spring, and we're going to be at Royal Festival Hall there's another film, I forget exactly what it's called. There's another music film festival where they're honoring lots of composers, but Henry is one of them. So I'll be performing at I forget the venue. Anyway, that's one. We're doing a concert in Italy, in Florence in May, at a big, beautiful opera house there. But things. I have a feeling after our PBS Great Performances show airs, which you won't see because you don't watch TV, that there will be, I think, interest in more concerts, because I think people will really see how fabulous this music is. And when you have this gorgeous orchestra playing the music, and with vocalists like we have on our show, it's gotta you gotta keep doing it. So we plan to have things throughout next year and beyond. If people want it, we'll give it to them.
Monica, I have no doubt that your parents have been brimming from above all year as you, Greg, and your siblings have celebrated your father. You're not only an inspiration for your musical artistry, but you are a role model for how to honor those we have loved and lost and a life well lived. So thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, Latife, it's been a long time coming, and I'm very happy that we finally got to be together. So far apart, but together.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you next time.